to ask you about a few of your specific texts. The first one that I read, and it made a huge impression on me, led to reading many others, is River of Blood. Am I correct in assuming that's one that's been more widely read, or, you know?
Well, it's one of the early books. I wouldn't say more widely read. It's the early book. The first book that I wrote was called Holy Ground. It dealt with very basics and fundamentals of whatever I thought God was, say, in terms of my early life background in mysticism. So I dealt with those issues, see, and how these things apply to human beings, and then what that might mean to practitioners, because there were some communities I was involved in, researching and participating in and enjoying very much the company of the communities as a step on my path. So everything's a step on the path, doesn't matter where you are, what you're doing, everything, everyone you meet along the way is a step on the path. So, yeah, there was Holy Ground, and then there was River of Blood, and River of Blood led to other books, you know, in a mix. And I did the Bhagavad guitar player back in the day. And what that means to me is it means the fortunate guitar player. That I felt fortunate that I had any spirituality at all, and I come from a spiritual family of serious psychics and healers, and I felt very privileged to be in that company and to have a role that's relevant to that practice. And even though I've been in the music, it's really been about spiritual practice right from the beginning. You know. And so the Bhagavad guitar player gives a first-hand account of my ideas and how certain kind of moral training can affect your music. I mean, you got to play from the inside out. It can't just be outside to outside, you know, because you see what other people are doing, and that's what you're supposed to do to validate your being what? What? Okay. An originator? You know, creator, because you're doing what everybody else is doing. I have a question about that. Yeah. And so there were many other books after that. You know, we have, as I mentioned, we have about 23 to 25 on Kindle. But there were many more written and incomplete. And the most profound one was the Sacred Knowing of His, which has taken forever to get up. It's still not out. But it will be up, and it's more comprehensive. I'm not saying it's intellectual reading, but it's really, to the best of my recollection, of the kinds of things I talked to my people about back in the day.
What makes a book like that more difficult to complete?
Well, you're dealing with something you can't prove. Talking about the spirit, what does that mean? Who knows? Some people can resonate with it, some people can understand it, some people are open to it, some people can say, well, I'd like to hear what he has to say about it, see if it's true for me. Because amongst the spiritualists, they had different views. Because different things that occur, the same things that occur, have different meanings to different people. So, there may not be any absolute book on these things. Each one of them is a step on the path. You try to, hopefully, if they have integrity, doing the best they can to be fair with the people that they're serving in terms of the audience.
Like, for example, with River of Blood, is the book more or less written inside of you before you then turn to paper, or do you write it as you physically
Some
write?
things are like that. Some of the things I've done, like the music is like that. But the writings are contemplations, really, in the spirit of sharing what I know I don't know with people, but because I'm opening to it, I'm contemplating it, I eventually do know. Enough to share with people something that can further their cause of going deeper and feeling better about themselves in this life, which is very important. And so even though I come from an Orthodox religion, a religious basis in terms of my childhood, it had very little to do with, like, once I got into the military, where I wound up in terms of spiritual understanding. I had to go into the military to have a God realization, which is very bizarre to say that, but that's exactly what happened. Once I got into the military, I mean, I had visions of various gurus and teachers masters and so on. And so that's how it works, how you don't expect it to work. Spirit works in strange ways. It's proven to me beyond a doubt.
Can you talk a little about the book I Am Silence?
I Am Silence was a book that I wrote because I was contemplating, I was meditating. Enough on what? Nothingness, emptiness, shunyata. Silence, I call it silence. Not the shunyata silence, but wordless, mindless, selfless, brainless, worldless. Yeah, that's the practice, going that deep into what we can call the but it's also the superconscious. You have to prove that to yourself. And so I Am Silence was a way of recollecting, recalling my understanding of silence. Deepest, profound understanding. So I say, well, we are that, whether we know it or not. Without entering the unconscious, it could be absolute silence, who knows, right? True consciousness, no consciousness, we have no life. We have to go back to that. We go back to rest, right? Silence, emptiness. Let's go back to that every night. We go back to that. See, so to meditate is the flip side of that. Consciously going in to silence. And that completes the gap to a certain degree for some people. Because here, at night, you're forced to go into silence. You have no choice. You're going to pass out. You're knocked out somehow. But here you want to consciously create this kind of environment of peacefulness and so on. Calmness and clearness and receptivity. Yeah, that's good practice. Then excuse me, even according to the spiritualist code, you have to be receptive to what the spirit is. And it may not be what you think or what you believe in, and yet it is what it is, and it'll get to you. Right? It's so subtle and so powerful, it will get to you. I mean, it'll knock you on your rear end if it has to prove that it is real. Not that that happens, but sometimes it takes a traumatic or tragic mishap to wake you up to your real purpose here, your spiritual purpose, as it might be for some people. Maybe not. Others.
Did that book pose some unique challenges in that you're using words to express silence and nothingness?
Challenges? In what sense?
Just in terms of being maybe a more difficult concept.
Well, maybe for other people it may have done that, because you have to get used to the fact that, just imagine, you're born of silence. Who's going to believe that? The one who's going to believe it is the one who hears that well. We can say, oh, you're born of music. But who's going to believe that or know that unless you're a person who hears that well? See? And so we're talking depth of understanding is a challenge regarding all of these topics at any point on the path. You know what? See? You are what? And then the more deeply you look, the more you see that you are the essence of the whole thing. Yeah? It all goes right back to who you really are before you became anything. Polluted, like a human being. Pollution. Garbage bag. Wonderful garbage bags. But more than that, deeper than that, our roots go into the earth and into the universe. Well, who's working from that particularly? It depends on how well you hear. And therefore I did this system. We have like an alternate reality system. We have Buddhism. I have Hudaism. And Huda means transcendence by way of hearing. Not intellectual knowing particularly. You don't need to know anything. You just need to hear and understand the hearing, because through our hearing, we, again, we're into the earth, into the sun, and the universe in general. The whole space of itself. God nature, Mother Nature, whatever you call it. And so many of us have the experiences earlier that we are part of the universe and the inner universe, the outer body, the nobody universe. It's a nobody, not just outer body, nobody universe. And we're just pure spirit soul. And when you study some of the teachings in the East, And the language of pure spirit being is mentioned by gurus such as Ramana Maharishi. Pure spirit being is zero, selfless, nothing. It's not to calm down, it's not to quiet yourself. It's because you have the ability to do that. It's not like anybody's doing it to you. As soon as you have a certain ability to cognize something, you go in reverse. You don't just go out, you go in. Because you are in. Because without the real in, there's no real out.